What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Brenden Kamarasamy. Brenden, how are you?
Great, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing very well, man. Doing very well. I'm happy to have you here. I think this is going to be a great podcast. I'm excited to learn from you after looking at your bio and learning a little bit about you. So I think it's going to be great.
Hey, the honor's mine. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, definitely. So for the audience that doesn't know anything about Brenden here, I'm just going to do a really quick warm up and tell you a little bit about him. So Brenden is the founder of MasterTalk, and he coaches ambitious executives and entrepreneurs to become top 1% communicators in their industry. He also has a popular YouTube channel called MasterTalk with the goal of providing free access to communication tools for everyone in the world. Fantastic. I love it. I'm probably gonna be asking you a bunch of questions because I'm just starting into public speaking, and had my first event in January, and I got two more events in June and then July. And so I'm breaking into the public speaking realm.
Well, you got a great voice. So at least you got a good start there. So there you go.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was told a long time ago when I was a kid. I was about 18 or 19, and there was somebody I met that was in radio that like owned a radio station. He was like, "You ever thought about a job in radio?" I was like, "No." I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Yeah, you got a really good voice for it." And I was like, back then I used to hear my voice in recording, and I would be like, "I sound like an idiot. Like I hate my voice." But I guess that's a good voice for recording.
There you go. That's the key.
Here we are. How did you get into public speaking? Tell us a little bit about. Well, how about we just start at the beginning? How'd you start into your industry and get to where you're at now?
Yeah, and the answer, Greg, is that it was an accident. So when I was in college, I went to business school and I studied accounting, funny enough, and that's what I graduated in. So I thought I was just going to be an accountant my whole life, which is literally the opposite of what I do today. But during my time in business school, I did these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age are like playing rugby, football, soccer, I wasn't one of those guys. I did presentations competitively. That's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, I started coaching all of the other students, Greg, on how to present so that they could win competitions. And I accidentally developed a gift in helping other people how to speak. So then a few years later, I had the idea for the YouTube channel Master Talk, which didn't really start as a business. It really just started in my mom's basement making videos for fun.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, like nobody's sharing this information for free. And that's what prompted the channel and where I am today.
Nice. So that's I love what you're talking about. It's like competition for nerds.
Literally,
So
yeah.
so you started the Master Talk channel really just to provide value to help other individuals because you realize like everything that I'm actually helping people with, it's not really talked about. So I can actually help individuals with better communication and presentation style. Hence your YouTube channel. How long ago did you start that?
You got it. And just to make sure we're not painting the wrong picture about me, I'm not some philanthropist, right? So the reason I started Master Talk was never to turn to a business. It turned to a business accidentally. But the reason I started it was to help other people, but also because I was making money elsewhere. Because I was a technology consultant at IBM. The reason I'd done those case competitions was to get that job. I just never thought I'd quit my six-figure gig to do that full time. That was the big shock of my life.
Yeah.
And how long I've been doing. I've been coaching since I was 19, so I'm going my 8th year now. But I started as at the channel in 2019, so 4 years, and I've been coaching as a business probably for 2.5, 3.
And what's your follower slash typical view count for your videos now versus when you started?
Oh, I mean, when I started, nobody was watching me.
Yeah.
That was a terrible, terrible videos. I mean, today I think the channel has like 30,000
Yeah.
followers. And the
Nice.
view count is, the average video, I don't really get that many views, probably 500 views,
Yeah.
But I think my most popular video has almost 500,000. Yeah.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That's fantastic. How long did it take you to build up to 30,000?
A long time.
Yeah.
YouTube is a long game, Greg. So what I always tell people is if you're not in it for a decade, you shouldn't be in it at all. which is odd for me to say, but the reason is because it took me 2.5 years just to go from 0 to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, and most of that 10,000 was a hustle. And when I mean a hustle, I mean a one-on-one DM hustle. Like people ask me all the time, how'd you get to 1,000 so quick? I got 1,000 subscribers in 60 days, and in my first 60. And the
Yeah.
reason's really simple. I just DM 2,000 people. I had a massive network of people in business school, and I coached 70 of them for free because I didn't even know it was a business. So
Yeah.
I went to those 70 people who landed jobs like Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, all these big companies, and I went up to them. I was like, guys, I don't need any money, but I need you to promote my YouTube channel. So that's what they did. That's how I hit 1,000 really fast.
Oh, dude, that's actually really smart. And it's the law of reciprocity. So, hey man, I hooked you up. Can you help me out? I need help with this.
Right, and my hookup was way bigger than theirs because I got
Yeah,
them
oh
like
yeah.
ridiculous jobs. All I wanted them to do was like, because I didn't even know you could get paid to be a coach back then. I just did it for the love of it.
Yeah.
I just said, just share my videos with 5 people. They're like, okay, for the job I got, I might as well share it with five or 10 people. So that's
So
what.
so you start coaching students for free to
Yes.
help them. That helps them. They end up kind of promoting your channel. You don't think it's a business. You're just like, meh, whatever. I want to help people. And you eventually start coaching. Where is the transition? Because you said you're working at IBM. Where is that transition where you're like, actually, there's something to this coaching?
Yeah, so it happened. Well, actually, one other thing I'll clarify as well. Even when I was coaching those 60, 70 people, I wasn't even thinking, oh, they're going to share my YouTube videos because the YouTube channel wasn't even a thing. What
Yeah.
happened, I created it in my last semester of college when one of the 60 people I'd coached just asked me a question that changed my life. And the question was, how did you learn how to speak, Brenden? And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, you've been coaching all these people. And I know you didn't know how to coach people at the beginning, but now you know how to coach all these people and you're really good at it. But who coached you? And I just went, I don't know. Like, I don't have any money, and my parents are factory workers. And that's what sparked the idea for the channel. Because when I went online, Greg, and I started watching all the other YouTubers in my niche, I was like, that's wrong. That's wrong. Well, I coached John on this last week. That's not how you do it. You actually do it this way. So I just saw so many things I disagreed with that I wanted to do something about it. But then the second piece, which is how it turned to a business, it was 9 months into MasterTalk. So I'm a big fan of a guy named Lewis Howes, who's the host of the School of
Yeah.
Greatness
I
podcast.
love Lewis House.
Right. Lewis is great. So he's a big hero of mine because I've been listening to his show since I was like 20 years old. So I went to meet him. So I went to Columbus, Ohio, which is where his annual event, Summit of Greatness, happens. So I go to the event. I spent $300 on the ticket. I take a flight, and it was my first ever personal growth kind of investment. And I met my business partner there at a 5 a.m. workout. And he's the one who's double my age, but then he's still my amazing 50-50 partner. He's the one who looked at my channel and said, you do realize you could charge executives thousands of dollars to work with you. And when he said that, I started laughing at him. I was like, who's going to pay a 23-year-old, which I was at the time, thousands of dollars? And he was like, why don't you just coach a couple of my clients and see what happens? And I was like, what? So he just really believed in me early before I even believed in myself. And I realized that I had legs on this business. It wasn't just a hobby.
Yeah. So you end up getting some clients. Well, you end up just coaching some of his clients. Now, at this time, are you being paid for this, or are you just doing it? So this is when the pay starts to come in.
Correct.
How do you scale it?
Think of it like this. Vamsi was a big believer in me long before I was. He saw my YouTube videos. We're both in the Desi community, which is like brown people essentially. And he was always looking for a communication professional for his leadership clients. He's a leadership coach, and he's also my personal coach. But he couldn't find that right person because they weren't talented enough. They didn't have the right skill set. Whereas me, I had the opposite problem. So I was really strong at delivery because I was sharing all my information for free because I never thought it was a business, but I didn't know the marketing and sales. Like I just didn't know how to get clients. I never thought of getting clients. My bill was paying me really good money. I wasn't looking to leave that at any point. So that's what happened. And then after we worked together, then I realized that there was a much bigger opportunity here that I wasn't seeing. So what happened with him is he gave me what happened. Well, actually, what happened was he had me coach his clients, his kids first to build the trust. So I started coaching like his clients, a 7-year-old, and we were charging like $500 for each of the kids. And then when he wrote me a check for $2,000, that was like my first coaching payment. I was like, oh my God, like if I do this 50 times with 50 groups of kids, I'll make $100,000 a year. I'd rather do that than work at IBM, even if it's a great company, they're a client now.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is so cool. And then it just started building on top of each other.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So, did you ever learn the marketing and sales piece of it in order
Oh
to
yeah,
start?
yeah.
Yeah,
Now the business does very well, but
yeah.
I was like to start with the ignorance first, right? So now then what happened, of course, was my YouTube channel grew. I blew up on Clubhouse, things like that, and then I started getting a lot of C-level executive clients that Vomsi wasn't referring to me. They were just coming to me from the channel, but I had the level of maturity now to get them into the offer, because a
Mhm.
lot of them, they would look at me and say, I've tried 3 other coaches that aren't good, and I just gave them. Alex Hormozi has a book on this that I recommend to people called $100
100
million
million
dollar.
off offers?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, it's how do you offer something that people feel stupid saying no to. So my offer at the time for like my first 10 clients, I don't offer this anymore, but literally, if I liked them, I just said, okay, you have doubts about my age, you have doubts about my skill set, and I didn't have any issues with skill set. I just said, hey, why don't I coach you for free for 2 hours? And why don't you, if you like what I'm doing, then I'll invoice you. Nobody said no to that. Coach them, and then the business scaled from there.
That's a really smart idea for people that have a skill set that and sometimes you don't even know, to be honest.
I
But
didn't. Yeah.
yeah, but like in your
Yeah.
situation, but if you have a skill set that you want to be able to coach people, that's a great way to be like, "Hey, I'll coach you for free. Hey, for 2 hours, I'll give you some coaching. If you like it, I'll invoice you. If not, no worries. You got 2 hours free." It's like, "You
Okay.
spent 2
Literally.
hours."
Literally.
So, hey, man, put your money where your mouth is, right?
Correct.
So I've actually done something similar with that because so in my company I get contacted literally multiple times a day from lead vendors, from marketers, stuff like that that are always like trying to sell their services to the company, and and it's always people that I've never heard of. Right, so I have no idea. Like, and most times when you try it, I've been in the insurance game long enough. When you try something new or new service, then it always ends up being disappointing.
Yep.
They always overpromise, underdeliver.
Yep.
And so I got to the point where I was like, "Hey man, do you believe in your services?" They're like, "Yeah." "Do you believe in your leads?" "Yeah." "Okay, well let me go ahead and test them. Just send them to me. Send me 10, send me 20. If they're great, if they perform well, I'll pay you for them. If they
Yeah.
don't perform well, you're out 10 leads. But then if they're great, it'll be continued business." And the people that scoff at it, like, "Oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that." I'm like, "Dude, your leads ain't good then.
There you go.
Your leads don't come back until you got a new offer, bro."
Literally. And that's a concept. By the way, we're so aligned on this. I get pitched like that all the time too. So for me, the concept that you just taught in 3 words is show, don't tell.
Yeah.
So the reason I gained prominence in my industry at a really young age, and I like emphasizing that, the reason I say that is to encourage people listening to this podcast to go after their dreams. Because
Yes.
you have more wisdom, you have more experience. Why can't you make it happen? So show, don't tell just means I don't need to tell you what I do. I'll just show you. And
Mhm.
then when you get the results, you scale really quickly and you get word of mouth. You don't even need to do business anymore. You just wait and then people just refer a bunch of people to you and you just pick up a phone and just go, yes, why don't we start it? And that's it.
Yeah, but then so you also your service and your skill set need to be good. They're great, undeniably great. Like you need to be good at what you do. You can't just start a coaching business on something that you're not that or that you're like mediocre at or like you're
Oh yeah.
kind of
Especially
okay at. Like it has to be great. So no, absolutely. So do you do public speaking as well, right?
I do a little bit of public speaking. So that's probably 10%
Of
of the
your
time,
yeah.
10-15%, but most of my activity is really coaching people, getting them the transformation, because it's just easier to scale that part of the business. Whereas speaking is a lot more competitive. You
Uh-huh.
have to compete against other speakers and there's whole vendor process. Whereas coaching is very easy to sell because you're convincing one person and then that person just introduces you to their friend and it's pretty much an automatic sale if you're in the space that I'm in.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Now, in the coaching space, are you doing what kind are you doing one-on-one? Are you doing group coaching? Are you doing like, hey, I've got a whole platform where, somebody wants to come in and just pay a smaller fee. It's a whole like all these recordings that they get access to in a group. Like, how are you doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that we've structured the offer kind of after trial and error, I'm still getting better over the years, is it's a mix of one-on-one and group. So I don't do pure one-on-one anymore unless they're willing to pay like, multiple five figures, else I just won't do it. Whereas now it's more about saying like, let's do a small container group 10 to 15 people and then make them each accountability buddies to each other while they do challenges, and then they'll get 3 one-on-ones with me during the process. But I think the principle, which is probably more useful to the audience, is you just got to try different models and optimize. This is a mistake a lot of owners make, is you need to optimize for what gets the customer the best results. So going back to your point around like evergreen recordings, I hate selling those, because I know even if you're spending a few $100 or low ticket, which is like what, $50 a month, you join this platform,
Mhm.
I know in my heart of hearts people don't get the result. So instead, what I'll do instead is I'll say, look, and which is my mission, obviously, since my intention was to create the videos for free anyways. So 100% or at least 99% of the information is free, but implementation becomes the fee, where I know at a certain price I can guarantee the result. So I'd rather just do that because it's just better for the client and better for the long game.
No, I like that. And I can see how you, and I'm sure you, when you first started, you were probably doing one-on-one more often.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
then you just scaled to a point that it made sense to do more of like a group setting. I like the idea of doing a group setting and having people be accountability partners with with individuals within the group. I'm actually sitting there thinking about, because I've been wanting to do coaching. I technically do coaching with agents now, but they're in my company. So I
Mhm.
coach them, I help them to sell, they start selling. Um, but sales is sales across any industry, right? It's universal. So I could actually coach anybody to do a good sales process. If you just tell me what you're selling, I can break down the sales process, what would be the best way to do it. Because I've been doing it long enough. Well,
Right.
um,
And
no,
I'd even add, by the way, to actually encourage you to do that. I mean, insurance sales is probably the hardest sales in the game. If I was comparing to all of across all of the different industries in the world, like insurance, you have to do a one-on-one meeting. You have to convince them. They have to show you the most vulnerable sides of their life. They're fine. They have to trust you at that level, and then still they might not close. That's a tough sale. Like coaching is way easier to sell the client on, because you just invite them to a free workshop. You deliver a ton of value and they see the transformation. So my deal flow is way easier. So if you can do insurance sales and you're coaching so many people, I mean, selling anyone any industry is going to be a joke
that's
for sure.
probably, you're pretty right. So when
Yeah.
you do those workshops, are you doing like a digital workshop or are you doing a local like
Yeah, we'll do digital because it's
digital?
scalable, and
Yeah.
since my clients are much, like, I'm based in Canada, but like 80% of my clients are in the States. So it's I only do it in person. They pay really high ticket, and then I might do like a private event just with those people. I
Mhm.
do like once a year. But other than that, it's really just like online, and it's easier to get people to the training, because if you do an in-person free event, one, it's free, so people aren't committed, so they might not even show up. And getting people to show up to an in-person free event is like ridiculously hard. It's possible. People do that a lot in real estate,
Yeah.
but I'd rather just do a online workshop that blows their mind, but it's much easier for people to refer their friends to it.
Okay. And then how do you, are you actually marketing that? Like, do you put paid ads and stuff like that to get them to that, or whenever you're doing your workshop?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, yes and no. So we do promote it, but what's unique about our approach that people can steal if they want is we don't run paid traffic. So what we do instead, I call this the referable free training. So a mistake a lot of people, I mean, it's not necessarily a mistake, I just don't like the approach. What a lot of people do in my industry or coaching in general is they'll invite you to a webinar, and then at the end they'll pitch you, right? They'll say, okay, this is my offer, this is what I do, like buy this right now, whatever. But there's a problem with that. The problem with that approach is you burn your brand equity. So let's say I'm a friend, I jump on this training and I loved it. Let's say it was a great training, but you pitch me at the end. I'll still like you, but I won't refer other people to that training because I know there's a pitch at the end. But the way that my training works is at the end, there's no pitch. The only pitch at the end is, hey, there's a free call that you can book if you want to learn more about our services, if you want. But other than that, it's a free workshop and see you guys. So some people have attended this workshop like 7 times, 10 times. It's the same workshop.
Yeah.
But the trick is, I call this the referable free training. I'll DM everybody who attended that workshop, or at least the people I know who are kind of well networked and high level, and I'm still not selling them anything. I just go, "Hey, Greg, how was the workshop? Yo, that workshop." And it's a tight product at this point. So they go, "Wow, the workshop was mind blowing." So what I do 3 weeks from now is I'll go, "Hey, Greg, can you refer like 3 to 5 of your buddies to this training?" You'll almost always say yes because you went to the workshop. So
Yeah.
what this does, it generates free leads for the business, and I probably got like 400 leads just this month from this strategy.
Dude, that's awesome. That's actually really smart. I'm the
Yeah.
same way. So, so when I'm doing I've been in insurance for a while and I was in another company, and the way I was actually recruiting was like, hey, we'll do paid ads, we'll do Indeed ads, we'll do job boards, we'll do Facebook things, like all this stuff, and just paying. And what you end up doing is chasing down people that don't really understand the concept of what it is that you're doing.
Correct.
And so you're just constantly chasing. It's like constantly fishing over and over again, right? And so what I eventually did is I changed my strategy, and I was like, I'm just going to provide a shit ton of value. I'm just going to teach people. Like, I have like my Instagram. It's just, I do reels every day on different topics about sales, leadership, and mindset. And I just put out content. I do free trainings for people. I do the podcast. The podcast is meant to actually help provide some kind of value to sales entrepreneurs. And over time, people just started reaching out to me. They're like, dude, I love your content. And I'm like, hey, what do you like about it? How can I get better? Right. And I'm just asking the questions. And then they'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? And they'll like throw something my way. And they're like, here's my situation. What do you think I should do? And I'm like, well, if I was in your position, I would do X, Y, and Z. And here's why. And I just give them exactly what I would do. And I coach them a little bit. And then they'll be like, dude, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And then they'll probably reach out to me another time, or a second, third, fourth time. And by like that time, and I'm still helping them, they're like, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing this well? And I'm like, dude, I just enjoy helping agents. And they're like, I want to be a part of it. How do I join your team?
There you go.
And then they just come to me, and then they're like, hey, I want to be a part of this. So there's something to providing a bunch of value on the front end, and showing that you're good at what you do. Like, because if somebody asks me advice, I'll tell them and I'll give them the advice. When they go apply it, they'll come back and be like, dude, that worked. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I've fucking been through that before. So you're welcome. So you provide that massive value. And then when they apply it and it works and they come back, what's going to happen is that sometimes it'll be like the second time, they'll be like, okay, you know what you're talking about. I want to be in your team. I've never got this kind of help before. No one's ever helped me this way. Right. I've never, for me, it's difficult to conceptualize like doing that in a paid way. Right. And like just having people coach, because most times there'll be insurance agents that want to join my team, and then I can coach them individually. I'm getting paid for everything they write anyways. And that makes sense to me, because I'm like, oh, I'm going to get paid in the long run anyways. But I'm now thinking about it, like I could coach anybody in any industry on sales. Like it's a very simple concept. But no, you got my wheels spinning.
And the answer to that, which is kind of funny, that I'm kind of like semi-coaching, semi-being interviewed, which is fun for me, is it really depends what your end vision is. Yeah. So it really depends what your vision is. That's will actually make the deciding factor, right? So let's say you take somebody like Ed Milet. Right, so Ed Milet was in the insurance game, as we all know, right? He became really, really successful. He's like one of the top producers at WFG. But then he looked at his vision, and he said, I think he's still in that business. But the other part is going like, but I also want to be a motivational speaker. I want to teach the whole world. I don't want to just make this about insurance. That's why he never plugs the company, right? Same thing, or rarely, very rarely. Same thing with Patrick Bet-David from PHP, right? Same thing.
Yep, same concept.
Right. But because their vision was something much bigger than just insurance, they improved verticals. They went up in their opportunity vehicle. Say Grant Cardone as well, right? He started with cars. He was a great car salesman. Then he started doing sales in like some other industry that I forgot. And then he just kept up leveling the OV, which stands for opportunity vehicle. And he just said, oh, I want to be the greatest sales guy of all time. But I think it really comes down to vision. Like if you see yourself in the insurance business, that's all you want to do for the rest of your career, then I don't think it makes sense to be a sales coach personally. But if you go like, oh, I want to be the Grant Cardone mind industry, I feel Grant's doing this and this wrong, and I could teach this better, and I could really change the whole game for everybody, and you have that bigger vision, then you would go a little bit lower on the insurance, and you'd go all in on the sales.
Yeah. So I actually want to be the next Ed Milet. So I want to be the public speaker, the coach, the mindset coach. There's a lot of people that started in insurance, and that like even Ben Newman, Ben Newman started in insurance. And now he's like a mindset coach and public speaker. So there's a lot of people that have started in insurance and then branched out into that public speaking / coaching arena because of everything that you learn. There's a lot that you learn in insurance, just grinding, trying to hawk these wares,
Oh yeah.
But it's great. I love it. It's a great time. So for anyone that's listening and they're like, you know, I want to start my own coaching business. I mean, you've given a lot of tips in talking about how your path was, everything that you've learned along your journey. What would you recommend? Just some simple tips. It's like, hey, if you want to get started, this is what I would recommend to look at in order to kind of, get that ball rolling.
Yeah, for coaching specifically, right?
Yeah.
So I would say for coaching specifically, what I would say is number one, the biggest barrier to a successful coaching business is doing it if you don't like it. So the big problem I see with a lot of people who want to get into the business is they see the dollar signs because it's a very profitable business. Right? I'm not going to lie. It's a very high margin. We're talking 90, 95% margins because you're only
Mm.
trading your time. Right. So if you can convince somebody to buy into your offer and you convince enough people, like my goodness, you're doing really well financially. Right. But if you don't have the energy to coach those people, your marketing and sales might be great, but your delivery is going to suck and you're going to get a ton of bad word of mouth and you're going to get closed out of the industry pretty quickly. So what does that mean? That means the first step to everyone listening to this, if you've never coached anyone for free, you should know not be in the coaching business. I think the reason I've been very dangerous in my space, I don't think I'd be successful, by the way, if I'm being honest with myself. I don't think I'd be successful in any other business besides coaching and ed. Like if I got into the insurance game, I would have gotten killed really fast
Mm.
because I wouldn't have had the energy to do it, right? Because sales is like really annoying for me. So I only do it if I really believe in the thing. So what does that mean? That means the first step is go out there and just coach 3 to 5 people for free and just see if you can get them results. And I did that indirectly without knowing this could be a business from the ages of 19 to 22, where I hadn't made a single dollar doing coaching. And I'm not saying you need to coach 60 to 70 people before you start charging, right? You might want to work with 3 to 5 people and get them crazy results and then increase their prices over time. That's the first piece. The second strategy is if you decide after coaching those people that you love it, you have such a joy. Like sometimes I have 10 coaching calls in a row, right? And I love it. Like I do it every day. It's the same call over and over again with just 10 different people. Then once we realize, in the same way I love being interviewed, that's what you can see in my face. Like I enjoy this, or also why would I do this? And then the second piece is after we do that, then based on the results, you craft one offer, not 17, not 20 million, but one offer that you feel explains what you do and how you transformed those 3 to 5 people so well in a way that convinces other people to buy into you. And for me, it's communication accelerate, presentation mastery, leadership mastery, relationship building mastery. Those 3 pillars, I took a long time to test the offer so that it made sense. And then the third piece is look at the people you're transforming and see who's getting the best results. So whoever's getting the
That's
best
good.
results are often the people that you want to niche down towards. So for
Yes.
me, right? So I say you're excited, right? So
Yeah.
for me, right? So what
Go
I
ahead. I'm sorry.
real oh, go ahead, jump in.
No, I said, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just getting excited. You're talking about niching down.
Right. So look, I'm not a big fan of niching down, which is counter. So let me make sure I'm clear with the advice. The first problem I have with niching down is a lot of entrepreneurs recommend that to people getting started, which I think is bad advice because you don't know what your offer is, your transformation is. You could only figure out when to niche down after you get transformations for people. So today I can tell you, and I'm going to, what are the 3 people who buy the most and why they buy. But the principle for your audience, Greg, is I didn't know that start prior to starting the business. I couldn't sit there intellectually and think about that. You actually need to coach a dozen people and then you figure out and then you ask them, "Hey, why are you getting such great results? Why is this working better for you?" And then you understand that. Example. It turns out to prior to with me without knowing it that there's 3 main types of people in the business who actually want to work with me specifically more and they're willing to pay a lot more than everyone else. The first person is the brown, I'm very specific here, the brown technology professional who's usually a solution architect who lives in the United States. Why? Because they get blocked in their careers in middle management because they were in engineering school, so they don't know how to talk. But if you want to be a leader, as you know, right, you're leading big teams, you got to know how to talk. So they lose to other ethnicities mid game in their career and they're stuck in that role for 5 to 10 years. So they're willing to pay thousands of dollars and they trust me because I have the same skin color as them. That's number one. The second niche that I've had a lot of success with is women executives who are specifically director and above. And the reason is because men get promoted based on potential, but women get promoted based on performance. And what that means is when a woman reaches VP or director, they're usually the only person or two or three people in that boardroom. So they have a lot more insecurity than the men do. So they're willing to pay higher prices and they get massive transformations because they take it more serious. On and on, right? I don't. This is not sales, but just explain the
No,
process,
I
right?
love it. I love it. Keep
Right,
going.
right. And then finally the last one is the tech CEO. Of course, there's other people who could buy communication, like say, insurance reps. Absolutely, sales guys. You get them extra boost in communication. It works. It makes sense because their commission will exceed real estate agent. Absolutely, but the third one was the tech CEO. And the reason is because if they're raising a technology round for their company with venture capital, they're trying to raise a $500,000 round. If I'm charging them 3 to 5 grand to write their pitch, they're gonna say, "Yeah, of course I want that. Like, I'll make 100x my money." And you're referred by a friend. Like, why wouldn't I say no to that? So even if I have clients across the board, those are my top three. But you only know that after you coach. So specifically in my business, what I recommend, Greg, is you coach 25 people for free, 20 people for free to A, see if you like it, B, see who gets the best results, and C, interview the clients and reverse engineer how to sell more people. Literally, I go to my clients and say, I want to sell more people like you. How should I structure the offer? And they're happy to do that. Why? Because I got them the result. Right? They're like, you changed my life. Of course, I'm going to help you sell 20 more people like you. And they tell me exactly what to say to other clients. That's how I do it.
That's smart. Here's the thing: is that you literally just laid out the blueprint. You literally just laid out the friggin' blueprint. And you know what? People are going to be like, "Oh, but I got this going on, or I got this going," and make every excuse in the book instead of just jumping in because they're looking for that immediate solution. They're like, "But I want to start coaching and get paid for it right now." That's a perfect like blueprint that will take you from brand new nothing into the future.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, that's the most applicable information. And I love this. That's like the most applicable like strategy that I've gotten on the podcast in a very long time.
That's why I'll recommend better guests for you then, Craig. Maybe it's a top of funnel problem.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got some good guests, but usually it's like an impactful story or something like how they got through something difficult, which I've had some fantastic guests. I really have. But in terms of like being able to take your coaching to the next level or even to start into it, that's fantastic. So what's going to be the future for you? Where do you see your company and MasterTalk going?
For sure, man. The mission of what I do, which extends beyond, I guess, the framework I gave you, is I think the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl who can't afford a communication coach. So I already know I'm going to be success. I mean, I've already had success in coaching, but but this success relative to age. So in 10 years, I'll be at a whole other level financially. So for me, it's not really about the numbers because I know I'll get there. It's more about saying, how do I become this generation's Dale Carnegie and help democratize the world's information on comms? The one sadness I always like to say on podcasts behind Dale's work is he was born in the wrong time period of history. So he was one of the greatest thought leaders of all time on speaking communication, but you can't hear the guy speak because video wasn't available back then. There wasn't really, you can't really hear him talk. He was never on a podcast, never had a YouTube channel. Whereas I have the fortune, the lucky fortune of being born in an era where my ideas can get immortalized. So yes, I'll scale the coaching business. Yes, I'll get more clients. But for me, the big play is in 10 years, I want to be that person that everybody can rely on, whether they can afford me or not, to learn how to speak and communicate. Because capitalism doesn't work for that 13-year-old girl, right? We can't monetize that person. That's why a
Yeah.
lot of coaches in my business don't share that stuff for free because they have no incentive to. Whereas me, it's a much bigger play. It's like, how do I make sure that that little girl's the next Elon Musk has the skills that Elon should have learned when he was 13, frankly. So that's the key.
Dude, I freaking love that. And but that's a purpose and a passion that's driving you, which means, and here's the thing is that when you have a value proposition that you want to truly like improve the lives of others, and it's not just about the money, what happens is that it drives your actions in a different way. You're not going to get burnout. And that's why I mean, you already mentioned this earlier. You're like, dude, I'll go on 10 coaching calls in a row saying the same thing over and over again to 10 different people, but like you love it. It's your passion. Like you have this greater vision of what you're trying to apply for and trying to chase after. Um, and that's amazing. And that's I get that question a lot because, dude, like today alone, I've got 5 podcast recordings back to back. I've got one more, so like I'm constantly on podcasts. I got like right after that, I got an agent coaching session that I'm going to be working with an agent, and then right after that, I got like another Zoom call with all my agents where I'm going to be doing a coaching with everybody. So like I'm constantly on the go. My calendar is always filled, and I get it. I'll get agents that'll reach out to me and be like, how do you not get burnt out? I was like, because I love what I do. Like I wake up excited to see like who I'm going to learn what from, who I'm going to impact, really hoping that like I provide enough value to people that it will make a significant impact in their life, even if it's one person. Like then I feel like it's a success, right? Like just like you were saying, like, hey, it's just like that one 13-year-old girl. Like you never know, right? And so I absolutely love that vision that you have. Is Dale Carnegie? Would you say that that's where you got a lot of your teachings in terms of like how you learned how to present when you were teaching yourself?
Fascinating question. I've never been asked this, by the way. And the answer is actually no. The reason I actually got good at communication, I actually learned from nobody in my field. I only found out about Dale Carnegie after. What happened is I took a very mad scientist approach. My background is my parents were factory workers. I didn't really have a lot of money. So for me, a lot of my communication mastery came from trial and error. So I'll give you the timeline. So I do these case competitions. I see it as my ticket out of poverty because they're going to give me all of these job opportunities at IBM and at the big four accounting firm. So I take it. And then I later learn that I'm good at them and I start getting ultra competitive because I start losing them too. And I go, well, I don't want to lose competitions. I'm like the Michael Jordan nobody cares about. That's like the way I describe myself. Because Michael Jordan, for those who haven't seen The Last Dance Netflix documentary,
Yeah,
check it
you
out.
need
It's
to.
amazing.
It's amazing.
It's so good. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't even care about basketball. I love the documentary. And what's interesting is the way MJ treats his teammates is really fascinating. He's really rude to them. He hates on them, and that's how he wins championship. I was actually very similar personality wise. But I'm a lot toned down now because I have to mature more for a general public. But back then, I was just as aggressive, but in a sport nobody cared about. So I never had flack for it because it's case competitions. Like who cares about that? So I do these competitions, and then I create strategies to help the other students. So I
Yeah.
try something. Remember, these students are not dumb. They're really smart. They have to try out to be in these programs. So they would tell me flat out, "Hey, I tried what you told me yesterday. It didn't work." And I was like, "Oh, okay, let me try something else." So I just start making a bunch of mistakes until something worked. But because I had that naivete, I was just learning all this on my own. So I brought a lot of fresh ideas to the industry that hadn't existed before simply because I didn't know any better. So then when I went back to the drawing board and somebody gave me the idea for MasterTalk, literally, I didn't come up with the name Master, my friend did. My logo, my friend made that logo for me, and somebody else gave me the idea for the YouTube channel. That's why I like to say communication chose me. So when I started watching the videos, Greg, and I watched all those PhDs, I saw an incongruence between what they were teaching and what I was telling the students. I was like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So the answer is I only found out about Dale Carnegie after, basically.
Well, you know what? Here you go. So Dale Carnegie, you're right. He's a great thought leader, and especially in communication. I need to go back and read some of his books. It's been a while since I read any of them. Um, but no, this has been fantastic, man. I appreciate you coming on board and just sharing everything. Is there any last tidbits you want to share with the audience, and anything that you've learned as specifically? Let's look at the transition into entrepreneurship where you had a 6-figure cush job and then you just said, hey, let's go. Like now's the time that I can actually do this instead. That transition seems to be scary for a lot of people when they are looking to do it. So
For sure, happy. And thanks for that context as well. And I was one of them, by the way. I cried the day that I gave my resignation to IBM, literally. And the reason I was so stressed out was because I was the first person in my lineage of family to do 6 figures and the first one to graduate from university, which means I was the only breadwinner in the family. So after I started working, I was like, okay, mom, I can retire you now. We all still live together, by the way. I just don't do it for financial reasons anymore. It's just easier to retire my mom now, and she doesn't need to pay down another mortgage. So I was actually really scared to quit my corporate job because that I was cutting my salary by like 70%. because I'd made
Mhm.
like 30K, I think, in my coach. I'd signed basically 10 clients at 3K in like the last, I don't know, 6 months before I quit. So I was like, okay, well, if I can sign another 10, and I can make 70 grand a year, I can make this work. So I was really nervous quitting the job. What's my advice though? Very counterintuitive. The advice is side hustle comfortably. I'm a big believer in the idea, Greg, that no one should ever start a business until they've learned the habits to be a successful entrepreneur. Meaning, number one, have a 6-month emergency fund before you quit. Why I'm such a big believer in this? Not because you need safety in entrepreneurship. Because if you can't save 6 months of capital in a business, what are you bringing into the business? Like if you're an overspender, you over index on your credit cards, you're not smart, you're not intelligent with your money, the same mistakes you're making in your personal life, you're going to make the same mistakes in your entrepreneurship career. So if you can't save 6 months of capital and you can't be scrappy in your personal life, you're not going to make it in business for the most part. There's exceptions, sure, people who max out their cards. Those are the stories that the media will emphasize. But the norm, it's kind of like I'm not sure I'm sure you've heard the statistic. Like the average age of a successful entrepreneur, we think is in their 20s, but it's actually in their 40s because they actually have a lot of success prior to starting the business. So that's number one. The second advice that I have, going on to side hustle comfortably, is have a clear plan of how you're going to replace all of your income. I knew exactly what to do day one when I was quitting my job. Post daily on Instagram, do this lead funnel. Like I already had all of the strategies that I learned through masterminds while I was working my corporate job. So you got to pay down your ignorance debt, as Alex Hormozy says so well. And three, it's so simple. Make money. Okay. Don't quit. Don't start a business if you got $0 in revenue. I was already making money in my coaching business. The offer was already working. I just needed more time to scale and prospect more aggressively and post more on social so I can scale. In other words, what I'm saying is the only reason you should enter a business is if you have a clear unfair advantage. And I'll tell you mine, not to gloat, but to inspire other people. So, what are some of the disadvantages I had in business? I was really young when I started coaching C suite. I was probably 22 or 23. So, that was a big disadvantage I had in business against my older peers because CEOs, today, my average client is 20 years older than I am. They didn't trust me. Like, why would I give the same three to a kid? And I'd rather just pay seven to the older guy. So, what did I do to fix this? Obviously the free coaching I did. The second was a focus on B2C instead of B2B. I wouldn't sell IBM directly. Instead, what I'll do is I'll go to the 2 to 3 executives that are my ethnicity, that need me, that nobody else knows they're working with. That was going to be my angle because nobody else is brown in my space who lives in a first world country. The last thing is I am currently, to my extent, the only communication coach in the world who's 26 and has 7 years of experience. So in 10 years, all of my competitors, who are more my friends, by the way, they're really helping me out. Another benefit of being young is that people are older than you. They just want to see you win because they're kind of done. They already made their money. So all of my competitors will have retired in 15 years and I'll be the only person left.
Mm.
So because of that and my knowing that, I played a very specific game knowing that I would win that game. But for somebody listening to this podcast, it's not communication coaching, Craig. It's I've been baking cakes for 3 years and I'm so good at it. I've tried every cake in this city and I know mine is the best. No one is going to beat me at that game. So in the same way, I'm not preaching life coaching. I'm not preaching career coaching, but dang it, I know I'm number one at what I do and communications coaching specifically. So you just got to figure out what is that lane through self-awareness that you know you can decimate your competition on, even if the worst case of your life happens.
That's dope. I like it. That's really
Yeah.
good. How long did it take you to replace that income? Once you sent in your resignation letter and you walked out in tears and
To be honest, not long. Okay, this is where the story
I
gets a
didn't
little boring. It wasn't that
I,
long. It was
I
probably
figured it
six
wouldn't be.
months.
Yeah.
6 months.
I was
Yeah.
thinking usually when people like have the same scenario and they've already started their side hustle, usually the average is like 6 months.
Yeah.
So, but and the point of that is for the audience listening, if you're on the edge, if you're like on the fence and you're looking to start 1099 and you are looking to quit your 9 to 5 in order to jump in and you just don't know when that right time is, hey man, like minimize your expenses, and when your side hustle can cover your expenses, it's time to jump, right, and just go all in because you're going to have so much extra time to literally go through that bell curve, that learning curve, and with you not having to do your 9 to 5, 40 hours, 50 hours, however much you're working every single week. And all of that is just completely focused work on that side hustle that now has become your career. You're going to skyrocket through that bell curve, and you're going to start to see that exponential growth. I had a very similar situation when I was in insurance. When I sucked, I was pretty bad, and I was doing a sales job that was salary plus commission. I was going in every day, and I was just making dials and doing this. I was selling this SAS software program, and I was setting insurance appointments in the evening from because I get out at 5 and I'd have my first appointment at 6, and appointment at 7, appointment at 8, and that was like setting the appointments during the day. I'd like go outside and just be calling leads and just dialing and grinding, trying to set appointments. And then I would drive home. It's like an hour drive home. I get home by like latest at 10:30. I'd wake up at 5, go to the gym, and do it all over again. And
Wow.
I set this appointment after a long day of work. I went to this appointment, and I ended up staying in that appointment really long, but I made like close to $3,000 in that home because I sold so much between the husband and wife. And I got deposited the next day, and it hit my account. And then my salary at the time wasn't very much. It was like, I want to say it was like $3,000 a month. It was like 3,500 a
Mm,
month. It wasn't much because I was making like $45,000 a year salary, and then
yeah.
commission, whatever it was. And so I was like, dude, in that one appointment, I got deposited the same amount that I make in a whole month here. The fuck am I doing? It's just like,
Mm,
no, man, that was the moment that I was like, no, if I can do it once, I can do it 20 more times in a week. And I walked in and just like, hey, dude, I gotta quit. Sorry. And he was like, no, man, you're great, blah, blah. Like, we could do part time. I was like, no, man, I'm going all in on this insurance thing. Like, I was
You're
like,
like, peace out.
I'm out, bro. so he was like, well, if you ever want to come back, you can, because you're really good. And I was like, I appreciate it, but I don't think you'll ever see me again. And that was in 2018. So
And you
never
know what's
never been back.
fun? What's fun about what you shared, Greg, is it's literally what we just talked about together that you executed to a T, right? So for the audience who didn't pay attention, Greg was already making money, right? He landed that you landed that 1 month of salary in one thing. You already had knowledge of the business because you were grinding outside of your 9 to 5, and you had a clear action plan. You're like, shit, if I could close one lead, if I don't have to work 8 hours a day at this corporate job, watch how many leads I'm going to close during the day. And of course your success has been testament to that. So there you go. Congrats, man. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Now you got to take that and it's funny. You're breaking down. I already know this strategy because I fucking did it myself, right? So, but I've never thought about it in that context. I never thought about it in context because I've been actually one of my VP of operations. He's like one of my best buddies. He's actually in the military with me when we were together, and he got out of the military in 2021 to come and work for me because he saw everything I was doing in insurance and everything like I was building. And he was like, dude, I love what you're building. I see your vision. Because I had these huge visions. Like I'm the same way. Like I want to change insurance industry, right? And I have all these things that I've like in my head that have been swimming around in there for the past 4 years, 5 years. So I shared it with him one night when I went to go visit, and he saw how much money I was making. He was like, dude, I'm getting out. He was a major. Like, he's making $120,000 a year in the military. And he got out, and so he's my VP of operations now. So him and I work closer together. He's my best buddy. But he's like, dude, you really need to start just coaching agents on like across everywhere. Just start coaching on sales and leadership, because the amount of information that we have just in terms of leadership, agency building, and then sales. He's like, dude, you could really do well. And I'm like, I don't even know how to like start it. Like, but I've already, like you said, you just literally like showed that comparison right there. It's like, dude, I already know how to start. I've already, I've already done it. Right. So I love how you just broke that down simply, and I appreciate it.
Right. And that will be your next step too, to become the next Ed Milet. Is this is something I struggle with early in my career, because I know the speaking tips worked for me, but then when I was teaching it to you or somebody else, they'd be like, Like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? Like, it worked for me. What? And then we're transitioning to, oh, wait a second. I have to assume that I need to be perfect in my deliver, or else they won't implement it. So that's why I broke it down. But that's a habit I've learned over the years that you'll quickly ramp up on. Like, it's not even. I mean, you probably already have it, honestly.
We'll find out.
That was fun.
We will find out. So thank you so much, Brenden, for coming on the podcast. This has been awesome. This has been a great conversation, man. I'm really digging your energy.
This was so much fun.
The last question I always ask all my guest hosts is if you have the opportunity to, and I know these better be good, by the way, because I can already tell by a lot of the names you've already dropped, but you have the opportunity to break bread with, sit down with, learn from 3 individuals, anyone in history, living or deceased. Who would they be and why?
Absolutely. So the answer is number one, Peter Thiel, who is the founder of PayPal. He started PayPal with Elon Musk and a bunch of other guys, then went on to build Palantir. His book is my Bible, which is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Amazing book on how to change the world and how to create the future. And he has a question in the book called, what is the truth that you believe in that most people disagree with you on? He says the answer to that question is what creates innovation. What's something you think is true about the world that most people think is untrue? So Airbnb is a good example. Hey, by the way, Greg, just letting you know, you're going to sleep in strangers' houses and you're going to pay them money to do that. Yeah, okay, good luck, buddy. Good luck with that business. Right? So that's what he means by secrets. And the reason I want to have dinner with him, hopefully I'll achieve that in my lifetime. I want the other questions. He only gave me 1 or 2 in the book. I want the other 57 he came up with, and I want to answer those questions for myself. So that's the reason I would love to talk to Peter. The second is Alex Hormozy. And the reason I'd love to talk to Alex is because we're doing the same thing, but in a different niche. So his goal is to make business education accessible to the world. My goal is to make communication information accessible to the world. So the conversation that we would have, which I have a feeling is going to be pretty soon, is going to be around the immortalization of ideas. So I'm curious how his brain is currently thinking about how to make his ideas immortal, like after he's dead. Obviously, writing a book is one of them. Like we're still reading Dale Carnegie's book, but Dale's only been dead for 50 to 70 years, right? He hasn't been dead for like 5,000 years. But if you look at like Meditations, which is a book by Marcus Aurelius, if I got that pronunciation, the biggest emperor of Rome, right? That guy, like that book is still being read thousands and thousands of years later. But is there other mediums that Alex is seeing that will help us immortalize ideas besides just writing a book? So that's the conversation I have with Alex. And if I had to pick those are probably the 2. The third one would probably be between Scott Harrison and Lewis Howes. I'd probably go with Lewis just because I think it's going to be much easier. I mean, Scott, I'm probably 12 months away from that dinner. You just have to donate to his charity a lot of money, and like that's it. So, and he'll just meet you. But Lewis is going to be a little trickier. So Lewis, I'd love to do an interview with him because I think it would be powerful. Because his personal story was he was scared of communication his whole life. He had a cast on like I did when he was giving his first couple of speeches. So I'd love to break bread with him and just nerd out over what he's investing in right now, how he's thinking about the future of what he's doing.
Nice. Those are all 3 great ones. I love all those. I'm actually just wrote down 0 to 1. I'm an avid reader, so I will add that to my book list of the next book I need to purchase, or one of the next books I need to purchase. So
There you go.
Brenden, thank you so much for jumping on. For the audience that listened to this was literally filled with value and value proposition. And so what I ask is ask a favor is to share this content with somebody else that can also learn from it, that can grow, maybe change their perspective, or see things in a different light. We grow this content and this show by word of mouth, and it's by your help. So it takes a quick second just to rate, review, subscribe, and share the content, but it means the world to both Brenden and I. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.